The first time the alien flagship screamed, I was standing inside its heart, and I knew, absolutely knew, that if I failed, an empire would die with me inside it. The scream wasn't sound. It was pressure, a psychic shockwave that rattled the bones and made the lights bleed red. Warriors twice my size froze in terror. Engineers fled. And somehow, inexplicably, the alien queen herself turned her eyes on me, a human mechanic from a half-forgotten Deathworld, and waited. That should have been my first warning. But it wasn't the last. My name is Eli Mercer, and I was never meant to be here. Earth had sent me as a trade concession, nothing more. A technical advisor offered to the Varelian Empire after first contact went badly. Their ships were miracles of biometal and living circuits, grown rather than built, but they were failing. Dying. And when the Queen's flagship, the Star Sovereign, began to collapse mid-jump, the Empire panicked. So they brought in a human. The hangar doors sealed behind me with a sound like a tomb closing. Alien soldiers lined the walls, weapons humming softly, their compound eyes fixed on my back. At the far end stood Queen HFY, taller than any human, crowned in living crystal, her skin glowing faintly like starlight beneath ice. Her voice entered my head instead of my ears. You have one cycle, human. Repair my ship, or die with it. No pressure. But that was only the beginning. Inside the flagship's core, I saw the truth no one else would admit. The Varelians didn't understand their own technology anymore. Their empire had grown old and ceremonial, trusting ancient systems they no longer questioned. The core wasn't malfunctioning. It was suffocating, choked by redundant control nodes layered over centuries. I did what humans do best. I ignored the rules. I ripped out sacred conduits. I bypassed ancestral failsafes. I talked to the ship like it was an old engine back home, muttering curses and encouragement in equal measure. The warriors gasped. Priests screamed. Somewhere behind me, someone fainted. And then, the screaming stopped. The Star Sovereign exhaled. Power stabilized. The lights shifted from bleeding red to calm blue. The ship lived. Silence swallowed the chamber. I turned around, hands shaking, expecting a firing squad. Instead, the Queen was kneeling. That should have terrified me more than any weapon. And it did. She rose slowly, eyes never leaving mine. You did not repair my ship, she said. My stomach dropped. You healed her. What I saw next changed everything. I was given quarters instead of chains. Food instead of interrogation. Whispers followed me through the halls, alien voices filled with awe, fear, and something dangerously close to reverence. The Queen summoned me nightly, not to threaten, but to ask questions. About Earth. About humans. About why we felt the need to touch broken things until they worked again. I told her the truth. Because lying felt impossible. We don't have the luxury of perfection, I said. Things break. People break. We fix them anyway. She studied me like a puzzle that hurt to solve. But the Empire didn't like me. Nobles feared me. Priests called me an anomaly. And when I learned the truth, really learned it, I understood why. The Star Sovereign hadn't just been failing. It had been sabotaged. By the Queen's own council. They believed HFY was too merciful. Too curious about humans. Too willing to question tradition. They wanted a martyr, not a ruler who changed things. And now, because of me, their plan had failed. That was the moment the story turned. Halfway through the cycle, alarms erupted again. But this time, it wasn't the ship. It was a coup. Blades flashed in the throne chamber. Bioweapons sang. I was dragged behind a pillar as guards fell, their luminous blood painting the floor. The queen stood alone at the center, wounded, defiant, power flaring around her like a dying star. And then she did the unthinkable. She reached for me. Human, her voice cracked in my mind, no longer regal, but afraid. I invoke the ancient right. I didn't understand. Not until she pulled me forward, placed her hand over my heart, and shouted words that shook the chamber. I claim this one. By law, by bond, by survival. He is my chosen consort. The attackers froze. None of us were prepared for the truth. Under Varelian law, the queen's bonded mate was untouchable. To harm him was to declare war against the throne itself. The coup collapsed in seconds, its leaders executed by their own guards. I stood there, stunned, covered in someone else's blood, wondering how in every hell I'd gone from mechanic to political weapon. Later, in the quiet aftermath, I confronted her. You used me, I said. You married me to save your crown. She didn't deny it. But she didn't stop there either. I chose you, she replied softly. Because you see broken systems and do not bow to them. Because you stayed when others fled. Because when my ship screamed, you listened. Her vulnerability hit harder than any blade. Still, I had a choice. Return to Earth as a legend. Or stay, bound to an empire that barely tolerated my existence. The council demanded I be controlled. Studied. Removed. The queen refused. Instead, she offered me power. Not as a king. Not as a conqueror. But as something far more dangerous. A human voice at the heart of an alien empire. I worked beside her openly now, dismantling old systems, modernizing fleets, teaching Varelian engineers to question their own designs. There were assassination attempts, protests, threats of civil war. And through it all, she stood with me. Not ahead, not behind, beside. The final test came when a rival empire arrived at the border, sensing weakness. They demanded my execution as proof the queen had not been tainted by humanity. HFY turned to me before the court, eyes burning. Do you regret staying? She asked. I looked at the galaxy-spanning map, at the lives balanced on a single decision, and thought of Earth, broken, stubborn, unyielding Earth. No, I said. But they might. I stepped forward. I spoke, not as her husband, but as a human. I told them what we were, why we survived, why Deathworlds bred monsters and miracles in equal measure. I told them that empires rot when they stop fixing what's broken. And when I finished, the rival fleet withdrew. Not because they feared the queen, but because they feared what humanity might teach her people. Years later, when the Star Sovereign sails peacefully through a galaxy slowly changing, HFY still watches me work in the engine bays, grease on my hands, stars in my eyes. She once asked me if I resented the bond. I kissed her glowing forehead and smiled. I repaired your ship, I said. You repaired an empire. And as the flagship hums beneath us, alive and listening, I know the truth. Sometimes, the most powerful thing a human can do is fix what everyone else was willing to let die.